Hi, Juan here, building from super scratch. And I didn't know how to start this video today, to be honest. I was kind of thinking, I've been going through a lot of different activities and a lot of different tasks, and I was not sure how to even start to talk about some of the things I was doing today and if they were relevant or not. So last week I set up 4 rituals, 5 with the bonus, that it was about. One of them is about just spending time for an hour to look how am I tracking with things. And it was so interesting to see how last week everything was so focused into how I was going to document the journey. Am I documenting every second? Am I documenting every emotion? Am I missing out on things that I'm saying to maybe people that I'm talking to that I should be recording? And I noticed quickly last week that it started to become more about documenting the journey than being in the journey, if that makes sense, which detracted a lot of what I'm trying to do. So I felt like instead of just going through the things I need to go personally, I started to get distracted, which is exactly how my brain wanted to gravitate, I think, to be distracted into, oh, now you have a project, oh, now you have this thing. Let's build this whole ecosystem around it to support that, which in this case, it was documenting the journey. So when I was looking at, okay, how's my journey going? I was like, oh, well, the journey on the things that are important, like, am I finding clarity personally or am I finding clarity professionally? I think I was so distracted in building the content pipeline, the content production, the content pillars, that then it just became more of a natural space. And it was an interesting thing to think about because I thought maybe it's just my brain distracted me from those uncomfortable things that I think I may or may not need to do properly. But usually I think when your brain starts to go, this is uncomfortable, it's going to go, don't do it. And then let's gravitate towards recording content. So it was just a very long observation into maybe my brain was distracting me from doing some uncomfortable things. One thing that I kind of been putting aside just because I don't love it is the whole concept of, and it makes sense why you need to start there, but it's like you start with values, and your values, it's kind of this place where you want to spend some time thinking, how do you want to live your life? What do you stand for in a way that speaks volumes of your existence, and what are you, and they're embedded in you. And so I had to do these exercises that I didn't find them easy. Maybe some of you would go, oh, this is super easy. For me, it wasn't. And I can see why people would put it on the side. It was uncomfortable because I didn't know where to start. And sometimes I started to say, okay, what I didn't even think about as a value, which values? I don't know, connection, family. And then you need to go and start to validate, are those your real values, or are you just saying them because you're an autopilot and that's what you've said all the time? So I did that. I spent maybe half a day just kind of through a little bit of meditation, going for a little walk and try to reflect on which values I think, and they're probably for review, of course, over time, because it was the first pass, about what values do I stand for. And the values became quite useful. I mean, uncomfortable, but useful, because what I started to work on today was, okay, I just want to focus, instead of documenting, on how do I get this business clarity into the new thing. So the idea of the values was useful because I worked today on, I wanted to look at what success looks like in my life in an ideal scenario. And having worked on the values helped me kind of look at the things that I want, right? The things that, what core values and principles are within me, because I want the things that I want with the things, my core values and principles, to be aligned. In the past, maybe they were not that aligned, and maybe that's why there was a bit of a gap, or not a bit, but a gap in there. And I know that when you do a business or something, you don't need to be aligned to all your values or all the businesses that you're doing. They have to be the most amazing, fun, passionate projects in the world. It may not be that, but at least if I can anchor it to some sort of value on the journey, maybe I can feel a little bit more fulfilled, less lost, and less like this is the wrong path. So again, going back into this idea of what success looks like, having done that work allowed me to start to look at when I was thinking, oh, I want these, and maybe I would like to try to be more things like be part of a community and help others, maybe share the knowledge that I have. And then automatically I started to think, oh yeah, that's aligned to that value. That's pretty cool. And even without having an idea or anything, you start to connect dots. And that made me comfortable, made me a lot more comfortable than when I was just, if you start to brainstorm, we having not done those previous exercises before. So that was cool. I think my psychologist will be proud because I was putting that aside for a long time. Then I went into issues that I have in order to fulfill the things that you want to do, and it's all about the process. And then I wrote a few paragraphs of what success meant to me. And I landed in a very generic place, and it was very generic because I don't have an idea. I did feel like aligned to the values. I'm going to read it, skip heaps if you don't want to hear it, but I'm just going to do it for the purpose of documentation and maybe context for me into the future when I start to build something, if I can track it back to this moment, which is what success looks like. Building something meaningful that it's recognized, respected, and generates wealth. Not just money, but the freedom to support my family, live fully, and be present. I want to wake up driven by purpose, surrounded by people I admire, doing work that has real impact, not too much noise. I want to grow, I want to give, and I want to feel grounded. My work enables time with family, community, connection, health, and moments of joy. As I was talking to Jax, my partner, it's something that it was quite forgotten, like personal joy. Like I get very joyful moments with my family, but joy personally, it's something that became, I don't know, it's kind of forgotten, or I missed it, or I haven't been paying attention to it. That's why I wanted to, I am respected for my ideas, invited to collaborate, and I would like to be one day a trusted leader. I want to be wealthy in every way, financially independent, emotionally, and relationally. I don't know if that's a word, but that's kind of where I landed with what success kind of means to me. It's super generic. I know that some of you would go, oh, of course, everyone would like that, or that's pretty straightforward. But for me, it just sits well. It sits like, okay, that sounds something that if one day in 20, 30 years I look back and those things were fulfilled in a particular way, I think that would be pretty cool. But then I jumped into, all right, so that's success. If success looks like that, what can you do now? Because it's not jumping into an idea straight away. Like, how do you jump? Like, where is it going to come? And how do you make sure you don't get lost in the world of infinite possibilities? Because that's another thing, right? Like, I feel I could get so lost so quickly. So then I decided to build, I wrote it here, looped decision-making system. So a place where I can make decisions and loop them around, like a little life cycle of decision-making that has a little bit of intuition. So I do feel like there's something very important about feeling and following your gut, your intuition for sure. How do you make sure there's traction? And how do you make sure there's logic? So you bring a bit of that rational brain. And that's why I think not all ideas, or the idea I'm going to do, it's going to be the most, it's going to fulfill all the values, or it's going to be just a passion project. And I get it. But as long as it aligns to something, and as long as I bring some logic, and as long as it's aligned to some of my values, I think that would be good. And so I created, and this is going to sound so boring. When I was doing it, I was like, oh man, this is so boring. But it's the non-glamorous thing that happens, I feel, behind the scenes that maybe, or maybe not, maybe I wasted my time 100%, or maybe it's going to help me. Only time will tell. But I build like three or four like trackers and things that hopefully will help me with decision making. I know. It's like, why don't you just go into brainstorm, do and execute? And I've done that before. Not for these episodes, I'll talk about it in another time. But me and my partner, we've started 5, 6 different things. Out of those ones, 2 have worked and a lot of them haven't. And partially, I feel it was a little bit of lack of organization at the beginning because we got too excited and we jumped the gun and then we just gung-ho doing. And then we got lost in translation. That happened to me a few times. And to be honest, to do the things that I did, I'm going to find them maybe a little bit more useful now that you can feel them and you can build a bit of a structure where AI can help me with the admin stuff and the tracking and putting the categorization of things. And it would help me validate kind of where I'm heading. So the things that I created, one is a career validation tracker. Now, a career validation, it sounds super boring idea. But what it is like when you have an idea, I'm going to try to follow 3 or 5. You go into all these kind of different phases. The first phase is you're exploring, which is cool. Then once you're exploring, you start to find like you're going into the right direction. You're going to go into soft validation and then you go into hard validation. And so having a bit of a tracker of the paths that I'm going and which stage I'm in on each of those ideas or paths can be quite helpful because I can have 2 ideas. One can be in soft validation and the other one I'm just exploring. You can still do that. So that's one of them that I did. The other one that was suggested by a friend of mine, which I've never done before, it's called a clarity rubric. Now, what it is very straightforward, but it's just more on a personal level. It's all about checking with me, my values, and what I set up to do personally and how I want to sort of live my life. So that career rubric doesn't need to be extensive. It's just a few little things. I have there purpose, strengths, wealth potential, visibility and impact. And it has a guiding thought. Something like, for example, if I have an idea and I start to explore it and then I'm starting to get excited, I want to have a time in the week or whenever to think about, does this path feel meaningful to me, right? Like if it's about purpose, does it feel meaningful? And if it isn't, am I okay? If it's not, you may be okay. Just going, no, I don't care. I need to make some money on the side and it's fine. Or maybe that's the meaning of that idea. And the guiding thought is, I want to feel a mission. I want to feel like I'm on a mission of something. I wake up with a mission to do X and not just drifting around. So that business, the clarity rubric, it's just for that. And it could be something that you can maybe print and stick on the wall, so you don't even need to go to a sheets or anything. You just have it present so you don't forget about it. Some of the things I want to do, I want to build something with other people that I admire and that inspired me. And I want to make sure that whatever I do follows that and it's aligned to those things. The other thing I build, it's a evaluation parameters, which it's all about how am I going to evaluate. So the rubric is internal, personal. The evaluation parameters, it's more about how am I going to evaluate this idea in the market. And there are things like, what's the demand? Who is this for? Am I really solving a problem? Do I have the skills to do that? What's the potential to make money on that, right? Like there is I cannot ignore the fact that whatever I do needs to generate some money, needs to have an income, needs to have, otherwise it's just not going to cut it. Otherwise it's going to be like a cool hobby or something that I'm doing, but it's not going to help my family, it's not going to help the things that I set up to do and the things that I'm trying to do. So I don't know, that's kind of why I thought it's good to check with you, but it's also good to check with the market. And then when you start to do like minimum viable products and a minimum viable offer or even a POC, you want to make sure, you want to be clear on who is this for, how am I going to test it, and can I just do a soft validation of these. The cool thing of all these things, the way it comes together, is that if you think about it, you get an idea, the idea goes into exploration mode in your validation tracker, your idea validation tracker. Once you start exploring a little bit, you go, oh, this has potential legs. All right, I don't need to do more discovery. Is this thing kind of aligned to the things I have there? Because if it is, there's validation, good. Let's now I go into my evaluation parameter kind of tracker that will be obviously specific to each idea, because each idea will need to be tracked differently. They may have different monetization frameworks or different ways of making money. But then the good thing is I can still have it all connected. It's all interconnected. So I was working on that today, and the whole day it was just purely organizing all these things. So when I dive deeper, which I'm going to start tomorrow, I feel like I'm ready to dive into different topics, to explore. Even if I have an idea and straight away I could do a little bit of research, does that sound? And with the internal rubric, I can say, no, that's not a line at all. It's just not even. Or maybe I go, oh, that's cool. Maybe there's something there. Let's do more exploration there. And it would also give me all of a sudden, without having even started, this framework or these phases that I know that if an idea is worth pursuing, or I want to try to test it, or I'm comfortable testing it, then I know that I can do a soft validation, or I can do a hard validation, or I can just, all of a sudden now I have a set of steps and I'm a little bit more, we'll just say it, I don't know, more, not organized, less kind of in the matrix of endless possibilities, which is a beautiful thing, but you also want to kind of bring it down a little bit to earth, I guess. So you make sure you're spending the right time, the right energy on the right things, because we all have limited amounts of time or energy on all these things. What happened, realized that the documenting the journey was distracting me from the journey. I spent more time, my brain distracted me from doing the uncomfortable things, which was working on values. I don't know why it was so uncomfortable, but it was. And I felt at the beginning it was a boring exercise, but then eventually started to become more clear that it was not only important, but how it started to connect to the foundations of other things. Then I went a lot more tactical on how I was going to approach this discovery mode of redefining my career. And then I landed on these 3 different artifacts that would help me hopefully stay organized and showing progress, or at least not allow me not to waste time which doesn't need to be wasted. I created the career validation tracker, which is where you can start to track all the different phases of an idea or ditch them. I created these evaluation framework where it's to test in market. And I also created my awesome rubric, which is all about my clarity internally, aligned to my values, which is the stuff that started this whole conversation of not knowing where to start. It's cool to see how things get messy in the head really quickly, and then you're creating chaos, and then you start to find a way through, and then some sort of organization starts to happen, and then you start to build. Once you start to connect some of these thoughts, you go, okay, then you start to have a bit of clarity. And I hope the same thing is going to happen when I start to dive into ideas and what I'm going to be testing and how am I going to be testing in market. I don't know. That could be interesting. We'll see how we go. But that's it. That's for today, Monday, Monday Talks with Juan. Hopefully you're all good out there, and I'll see you later.